Yeah, we can do cameras off or streaming.
Yeah.
Try that, Dorian. I like pasted the invitation.
Okay. Yeah, I was literally just about to, that's perfect. Okay. That's the same number as I got. All right, thank you. Super, I'm about to send it to you now.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for waiting for us. We definitely had some technical difficulties and we worked it out. And so we're not going to allow stress to stress us. My name is Deborah Smith Gregory, and I serve as the acting coach, the acting chairperson for the Alliance for Newark Public Schools, as well as the president of the NAACP branch, Newark, New Jersey. So I want to welcome you all. And before we get started, I would like to raise up the name of one of our colleagues who passed this past August. His name was Roberto Cabanas, and he was an organizer, a dynamic young man who had the courage of his conviction to stand very, very strong and very, very tall for his beliefs. And we lost him in August, and we miss him. And so part of talking about mental health is acknowledging when we're not okay, like the young woman did when she was playing tennis. And so we're raising up and lifting up Roberto Cabanas Jr. And we just wanted to say his name, because through saying his name, his spirit lives with us. And if his mom and his aunts and his sister are listening to this, we miss him too. We love him, and we will not forget our dear friend and colleague, Roberto. Now, so I want to give you a little bit of information about this particular forum, and because we got a little late start, I'm not going to be long-winded about it. The Alliance for Newark Public Schools was formed in 2007. We are a group of organizations who believe that all of our children in Newark deserve the best from their community. We believe that we need to be another parent, and we believe that the village has power. And so what we have done is we have worked very diligently to make sure that the best education for our children is possible. We gave a survey at the beginning of COVID, just trying to get a feel for this uncharted new territory called COVID-19, remote learning, and everything that went into trying to grapple with that. And one of the issues that kept coming up in the survey was the need to examine, to explore, to talk about mental health. But with that particular survey, we were more concerned about our children in a position to have everything that they need in order to go into a remote learning environment. And so we gave about 6 town halls throughout the year with that same question, but the same issue kept coming up about mental health. And so we decided that it was time for us to address it. We decided that we weren't going to talk about anything else but mental health, and that we would send out another survey. And I told our guests while we were preparing for this that I took the survey, and it felt, I felt a little apprehensive, if you will, about telling my business, because traditionally in all of communities, Black communities, especially Latino communities, we don't tell our business. We just don't put it in the street. We don't talk about it. We just keep it moving. And so I was kind of feeling that way. We're going to show you what the results of the survey, what they yield, and the fact that show us where our work is. Now, so this program is going to be in 3 parts. So this first part is going to talk about the survey, and that will be conducted by our co-host and Dr. Leah Owens, former board member and current teacher educator. So she's going to take us through that part. Then we're going to get some testimonies and feedback from our community. And then our experts will then give us toolkit of solutions to look at to make things better for us, so that we're not just having a conversation, but we walk away with some tools to use. So I'll present to you Dr. Leah Owens.
Thank you, Deborah. Good evening, everyone. So excited to be here to talk about this very important topic. As a town hall, we're looking to have a dynamic discussion and not just a kind of reporting out, but really dive into what's happening in our great city of Newark. So I would like to ask board members, Newark Board of Education members, Verily Santana and Adoria Murray Thomas, if they could come up to the panel, if you will, and also Superintendent Leon. And we will welcome them. Hello, good evening. Hello, thank you so much for taking your time out to be here this evening. Definitely just want to thank you for your service to the community, the board members in particular, and to the superintendent for your tireless struggle to make sure that our schools are doing right by our children. So I know we're gonna bring up, because we just want to kind of move along, so we had a little bit of a late start, but we're gonna bring up some of the key results, and I'm gonna read those out. And I know that some folks on the panel have seen these results already. So I'm gonna ask, after I read out the key results, that if board member Murray Thomas and Santana can start to think about your response to these results, and then we'll shift into Superintendent Leon. And just have a conversation, right? At a board meeting, we get a lot of information because that's the purpose of a board meeting, but in a town hall, the expectation is that we're able to have a conversation. And even though it's a short time, but try to dive as deep as we possibly can. So here are the key results. 66% of respondents acknowledge that the COVID-19 pandemic has caused their mental health to have negative consequences on their day-to-day activities. 60% of respondents have a family member who struggles with mental health issues. The top mental health issues that respondents are struggling with are stress, 90% of the respondents, anxiety, depression, grief or loss of a loved one, loneliness, and trauma. A full 95% of respondents would seek professional help, right, if they thought it would help, but only half had participated in mental health counseling in the past, while the other half had not at all, speaking to what Deborah was just saying in the introduction. We know that these services are out there, but are we actually seeking them? And 60% of respondents are not even aware of the mental health services available to them in their own communities. And last but certainly not least, but 88% support having increased access to community-based mental health services through the public school system. So board members, when you see these results, what is your response to this, right? Some words that come to mind for me are systemic, crisis, prevalent. What can you say about what's happening with the district in order to address this issue? Yes, Board Member Murray Thomas, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Owens, and thank you, Ms. Gregory, and the entire Alliance for putting this together, and to my board colleague, Ms. Santana, and Superintendent Leon. Just really happy to be here, as well as for the other panelists. When I look at these numbers, I see my students. I see my young person who came into the pandemic at the tail end of 2019, going into the beginning of 2020 with a 3.5 GPA, and 6 months later was with a 2.5. When I look at these numbers, I see my student who is a junior at Central High School right now, who has been doing exceptionally well up until she lost her mother to COVID just 2 weeks ago, after their whole family got sick and the mom was the only one that passed. And now she has to worry about college, right? And getting back on track. And so when I see these numbers, I see our young people, because behind every number is our actual young people who live this out in real time. So I know that the kind of focus here is twofold, right? Or threefold. One, like what the issue is, what the district is doing, and particularly us as board members, how we're advocating, and what we need you all to do as a community to work more in partnership with us to get things done. So I'll try to talk about all three briefly. As most people know, I'm an educator, born and raised here in the city of Newark, teaching, having taught and started nonprofit organizations, youth development programs all around young people who frankly were affected by trauma even before COVID, right? We know that COVID didn't really create all these problems. It really kind of exacerbated issues that were already there. We had young people who were struggling with adverse childhood experiences before it was called ACE, right? And so what COVID's forced us to do is really look at the issues that have already existed and be very unapologetic about how we address them. I serve as the chair of the Program and Instruction Committee. And while mental health and some of those specific resources tend to fall under the Office of Student Life, you can't talk about students learning and program and instruction and not asking like if they are well, right? And so fundamentally, almost every single meeting, we are asking about how is the district responding to trauma? What are the resources that exist and how can we better advocate for them? And so one of the things that we hear a lot of, and that I'm pretty proud that the board has invested in, not just in talking the talk, but actually walking the walk. And you know, if you're gonna walk the walk, you gotta put funding behind it, right? And that's really investing in mental health services for young people. There seems to be a multi-pronged approach, one of which is making sure that young people have spaces where like someone just asks them how they are, right? And so we know that having just that touch point, whether it's from an adult in the school or a mentor, a young person having that touch point makes a huge difference. But that's not enough too, right? We also need to make sure that we're screening for if there's instances of trauma like adverse childhood experiences, screening for if we have a student who lost a parent to COVID or just saw a brother or a friend get gunned down 2 nights before, that they have those supports. And so the district has a few things in mind that I know the superintendent will speak to more, but one is the Rethink program, which is a social and emotional learning program that is interactive. It's a screener too. So they have 2 levels of screening, one of which is just kind of getting those overall data points. How are students mentally, socially, emotionally, and then using that data to actually say, all right, if our young people are not well, here's how we're responding, right? One of the great things about the Rethink Ed program is not only is there a feature on there for students and staff, but also for parents. And so parents are able to be notified of how their young people are faring and doing work around that lens. And so that's one thing, right? Just making sure just within our actual curriculum and day-to-day programming, students have those touch points, not just with those in-person meetings with faculty and staff, which is important and that has to happen. I know for me, when I was in school, when I had a certain teacher just ask me how I was doing, that would change the game, but also tracking that data is super important. And the district's really been prioritizing that. The next thing I'll share too.
So Board Member Thomas, just because of time, like I really appreciate that you gave that very specific example, but I do want to give Board Member Santana a chance to chime in. And I want to put a question out there that either Board Member Santana, if you want to respond, or Superintendent Leon, if we have time to come back to you, Board Member Murray Thomas, but like, right, so again, I'm trying to frame this as a conversation, right? In the board meeting, we get a lot of information and absolutely agree, like if something's important and significant, we put funding behind it. But still, I can't help but wonder, should it take a program? Should it take a program for children to have someone, like you're saying, as that touch point to ask, how are you doing? Right. And this, to me, it makes me think of culturally responsive educators, culturally relevant educators. Like pedagogy doesn't have to come in a box, right? We don't have to pay out for anybody. It's about political will. It's about the ability to actually educate and what that means. So I know that that's something that's come up in the community about this idea of purchasing systems and programs and so on. Well, what about just being human beings in general, right? And what that looks like. And the last thing I'll just put out there is a large number of our respondents to the survey were actually teachers. So like this idea of the adults as well
That's right.
in the school system, not doing well. So Board Member Santana, just your responses to the survey results, or if you want to respond to anything that I was just adding on there as well.
Well, Dr. Owens, you just actually read my mind. I was going to bring up instructors because I know we were focused on students, but it's been so hard for our staff, not just teachers. And we're talking about folks in the classroom, right? Because we have our specialists, we have our support staff, we have our aides. It's been hard. We're dealing with some pretty deep-rooted systemic issues, and we're also dealing with a pandemic. There's a national teacher shortage. Our teachers have become, they've always been heroes, but they really have had to put up their capes, and it's a 24/7 job, and they're being inundated with the pressure and the responsibilities of having to perform and deliver under less than ideal circumstances, to say the least. I do sit on the personnel committee, and this is something that has been raised time and time and again, but we've actually implemented a wellness initiative for our staff. So, and it's anonymous. So, they feel comfortable right now attending these behind the curtain safe spaces, right? Because I think that right now they're feeling, well, we have to input this data point, we have to perform this, we have to deliver this, there are deadlines for this, that this is really a time for them to just connect with one another, check in on themselves, and to allow themselves that grace period. You've highlighted something that we've been struggling with, and something that I think we're looking to resolve. I think the district has implemented some really creative strategies in terms of like addressing the issues. Is it perfect? Nothing is ever perfect, especially under these circumstances, but we stand by our teachers, we stand by our staff, we stand by our students, because we know at the end of the day, probably one of the most critical touch points a student has in their career, in their student academic career, will be their instructor. Right. So it's critical that we support them, because, they are supporting our students. And in order to ensure that our students are receiving the best and the highest quality education, we need to ensure that the teachers are being supported as well. These are just some thoughts. I have a lot of, when I look at that slide, the first thing I think of are questions. And if there's something that, and I know that we're like bolstering our supports for our students and our staff, but, there's work to do. And that these are just like quick thoughts that I'm like, are just running through my head right now.
Dr. Owens, I know that we have to get the superintendent. Thank you, Board Member Santana, but I just wanted to drop one thing in the chat. And so, as we know, we have 2 public board meetings every single month. During the business meeting, we go over committee minutes where we kind of really go in depth around what's being said and talked about within that committee. Now, that being said, I know there's a lot of information being thrown out there that everyone does not always get. So just in preparation for this meeting, I just put together some excerpts from the last board meeting where one of the committees that I serve on, the Office of Student Life, gave a pretty in-depth kind of report and update on some of the work that the district is doing on mental health and SEL. Because to your point, Dr. Owens, it's not just about a program. It has to be embedded in the system and the culture.
Mhm.
I know for me, when my father was gunned down 2 blocks from my house in Newark, it wasn't a program that I went to that saved me. It was my mother, it was the church, and it was my teachers and my principal who brought me to the office and said, look, you acting up in school. I know you need some extra love right now, so let me give that to you, right? And so those important one-to-one touch points are key. And the district is doing a lot of work to make sure that that is happening and having a cultural responsive ecosystem, not just a program, but that takes work, it takes accountability, and it takes transparency. And that's why conversations like this are so important. So in the link, it's just some snapshots of some of the work that the district's been doing across the board from some of our recent kind of committee meetings, and also some links to resources that are all on the district's website on mental health supports, both for parents, for young people, and for teachers as well, who just want to learn about how to navigate these resources in the district.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Board Member Murray Thomas. So with that, Superintendent Leon, again, to Board Member Murray Thomas' point, we get a lot of information at the board meetings. They continue to be streamed live to Facebook and YouTube. We can get on the district's webpage as well for folks who may not know. So folks can definitely go back and be able to see that. But I would like to kind of come from the point Board Member Murray Thomas was just making about a lot of questions being asked, a lot of information being presented. In your thoughts, can you share with us how it is that you and your team know that the initiatives and strategies you're putting in place are being effective?
Yeah, so I think one of the first things that I want to do, because that speaks to, what our metrics is that are in place, to what degree. So depending on the school, and you would find it on the school's actual website, there are different programs that were predetermined to best meet particular schools' needs. So the fact that we're the largest school system in New Jersey, we know that there are a lot of people that are out there that were willing to help, but to be able to target the whole entire district, there weren't organizations big enough to assist us with supports. So depending on the school, there are particular programs that are in fact in place that we're monitoring obviously carefully. We're doing analysis with regards to how are students doing, not only behaviorally, but academically as well, with all of the interventions that are in place. I do want to take a step back though. Before I even started in this role, actually, when I just started in this role, Dr. Nadine Burke Harris, who is the leading expert on ACEs, she provided this training for school leaders throughout New Jersey, and I was invited by the First Lady of New Jersey to attend. So we knew that we were going to need to tackle this issue. We did not need a global pandemic to help us realize the importance. It, however, has lit a fire under the urgency of the moment and has pushed it, obviously, to the forefront. So it's a very important balancing act between the academic programming as well as the social emotional learning needs of our students. So the monitoring of all of that is something that we're constantly doing since its implementation about a good 15 months ago, to being able to see the impact now that students returned in September of 2021, 100%, to actually see evidence of it working. So we're seeing signs of behaviors that are extremely important, and that in comparison to pre-COVID-19, showing actually results that there's evidence that it's working. Just in fact, disciplinary issues, although some violent, have obviously decreased over time. We're doing crosswalks with how the academic programming is being impacted, which is extremely important. I would just want to add one thing, that when we returned back to school in September of 2021, the teachers, because they have been working so hard, ran. And some of them ran, and we've never been in a situation where a crisis has impacted everyone. So some of them couldn't run as fast as they wanted to. Some of our students were not in sync. So we did a January reset. In December, I met with child study team members, social workers, learning consultants, our psychologists, and our school counselors. And they began what I am calling now mental health teams. They launched on January 3rd. They became full effect when kids returned back in person on January 18th. they've created action plans that I think are going to the point that you were making. We don't need to hire somebody to help us with this. We have a lot of really good staff. We make sure that they have undergone ACEs training themselves. And we know that in collaboration, because we need a lot of help, that on October 28th, we did a vendors series, because there are people out there that probably could help us and need to navigate through the recruiting process to actually become an official vendor. So I just want to say that as we're monitoring this and we're making decisions about what's working and what's working really well, that we're going to seek assistance. That's why the rest of this session is extremely important. And I didn't thank, obviously, the Newark Alliance at the start, but I say the fact that you all are promoting these types of conversations, really, really important, so that we make more people aware that it exists, that it is real, and it may be the very reason why progress is not seen as prevalent in some students versus others.
Got you. Thank you so much for that. So we are coming toward an end to this segment. So I'd like to do a quick 1 minute. Don't make me turn the timer on. 1 minute to what is not happening that you would like to see happen to address this mental health crisis.
I can kick us off, Dr. Owens, really quickly. Of course, thank you to all and for all the folks who worked behind the scenes to put this together, and for everyone joining us tonight. So one of the bullets there said 60% of the respondents, they weren't sure where to find the help, and they're not sure where in the community where they could go to get the help. Right? That's been an issue, and it's, the district is so large, our community is so large, we've got so many different moving parts, but the infrastructure is there, the programs are there. We just need to better align them, create better alignment, centralize some of this stuff, right? Because I think there's a lack of cohesion and centralization. So that is definitely has been an area of growth. And this is something that we're determined to work on. I know that the district has been working on updating the website, and specifically towards the community portion of the website. So we're hoping that we can better, disseminate the information and get the proper information and resources to the people who need it the most. And maybe also identifying, I don't think this is also an issue, right, where Ms. Smith Gregory, I'm not sure if I'm over 1 minute, but I'll make this last point, where she wasn't comfortable filling that out, right? It's also, I think we need to build that trust, right? And that's an ongoing process, and we're going to continue to work on that too.
Absolutely agree. Thank you so much.
A number that,
Thomas.
yeah. Thank you, Dr. Owens. A number that stood out to me is a full 95% of respondents said that they would seek professional help if they thought it would help. And so the big thing that stands out is we have to reframe what mental health even means. There is, 5 years ago, when I thought of mental health, I thought of laying down on a couch, looking up at a ceiling and like talking to a person 5 feet away, right? And I would dare say a lot of our young people and even like our elders may have thought the same. But COVID has taught us that actually mental health is a little bit deeper and simpler than that, right? Mental health is having those systems, those supports, those kind of networks, that just person or conversation that can make sure you are well, and when you aren't well, give you resources. It's fitting that a Dr. Monique is on here, right? A woman who has been such an incredible partner with my own young woman, and she wins, and who literally within a matter of like 30 minutes, it's a couple years ago, I'll never forget this, helped a group of 10 or so teenage girls who were going through a trauma-informed training actually with some police officers in the city, and help them work through the trauma that they felt after going through the trauma training, right? Like, and so mental health resources looks like having the right people. It looks like collecting data. I'm a strong believer that what gets measured gets managed. And so I think one thing that we're not doing enough, we are not like comfortable asking real questions, because sometimes real answers make us uncomfortable. So we got to get more comfortable with the uncomfortable, so that we can get the real answers, respond to that data, create opportunities that exist to help young people. Because young people, when things work, young people will let you know. And when they don't work, they'll tell you too. So we got to stop being scared of what young people have to say and actually respond to that and design our systems accordingly.
I just want to add that, you know, mental health is real.
Yes.
And that the point that I would want to highlight is that, and I think I'm astute, I knew that mental health, that people were having mental health people, not just children, people have mental health issues. But what COVID-19 has done, it has unveiled the fact that all of us have mental health issues. So I think that the 60% line that Board Vice President Santana raised is a really good one, that there are a lot of resources that are actually available, and we just need to make sure that we're communicating that as effectively as possible. And even just at board meetings, dropping those links so that people can continue to access them. A few easy tips. Every school has a pandemic response team. If you need help for your child, not only the principal, but your child's classroom teacher. And we have this entire new team, the mental health team at the schools that are there designed to help address your ongoing needs. So there are people that can share and show you the way. All you need to do is reach out to us. And since a lot of people may not do that, we're making sure that we're getting information into your hands so that we actually come to you.
Thank you. Again, thank all three of you for your time. I know, you're all very busy people, but to take the time to come out and on behalf of the Newark Board of Education and the district and speak to these issues tells how important they are to you as well. So thank you. I'm going to invite you to step down from the panel and even join the Facebook audience as we move into our next segment. Thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Owens, for your work on and off the board. We see you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. So very important information. Again, we are dropping info, I believe, down in the Facebook comments. Again, to their point, check out the Newark Board of Education's Facebook page. All the board meetings are there, recorded. You can get even more detailed information or the website itself. So up next, our panel is going to be a community speaks panel. So we have a student, parents, grandparent, an educator who are going to speak to their personal experiences with mental health, whether they were struggling themselves or what they're seeing in their space in Newark. So great, we have folks popping up. That's all good. So we have Allison, James Friesen, Yvette Jordan, Halea Robinson, and Sharon Redding. So I am going to jump right in. Actually, we're going to start with Halea, who is a senior at Newark Public Schools District, who has the choice, and we love choices, between Drew University and Albright College. So we are really excited to stay in touch with her to see which school she chooses and gets the honor of having her there. But welcome, good evening, Halea. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So again, thank you for speaking up and putting a voice to this very important issue. So I'm going to go around to each of our panelists one at a time. So again, starting with Halea, can you please share with us what have you been experiencing during COVID in terms of mental health?
So my experience with it is that during the beginning of the pandemic, more so the beginning of the school year, I had a breakdown and I didn't really understand why. And I kind of thought about going to therapy because previously I had done therapy before, but I was also part of that stigma of I don't really feel comfortable talking to a stranger about my personal business. And I felt it was something that I can get over in time. And it is what it is. But now that I've actually been in therapy and I've had different breakthroughs with different topics, I now, what can I say? I now navigate differently, and I can address issues that I didn't think were issues before. And I'm able to say that I'm not okay and be okay with saying that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being willing again to come on and share, especially something so personal, because it is having an impact on other people and helping them to see how they can also find other ways to navigate their lives, and find wellness. So to that point, can you speak to us about one or maybe two strategies that you have learned through this experience that are helping you to cope?
Well, I've learned how effective words of affirmation really are. I remember when I would hear people say, you have to, speak words of affirmations and even put sticky notes on your walls and your mirrors. And I thought they were so tacky and corny, but, I remember that my mother and my grandmother, they used to always tell me to speak things into existence. And I always believed in that because that always worked for me. But I tied that into words of affirmation once I started doing therapy, and it really works for me. It goes as far as like, today I'm going to have a good day. And I actually start the day with a positive attitude, and that generates that good day. And I don't allow anything to disrupt that good feeling because I've already said today is going to be a good day. And I also have learned that I can't prioritize my goals over my mental health because I've learned that it's really hard to function and achieve the things that I want to achieve when mentally I'm not healthy.
Thank you. So, if we can shift to what it's like to be a student right now, particularly in the school district. What are the schools like? What is it like for yourself, for your friends, for your peers? What are you seeing? Is mental health struggles prevalent in your school, or is it quiet? What is it like?
It's very prevalent. It's a very hostile environment amongst the students, a lot of violence, and it's just a lot of that. And a lot of people don't know what to do. And faculty members are trying, but somehow, some way, it's not getting through to the students.
And to your point about seeing that and realizing you needed to prioritize your health and your mental health over your goals, do you see faculty and staff prioritizing students' health over academics, or is it still the push to do well academically? Or are you finding there's a balance there?
I think individually, some staff members do find that you need to prioritize your mental health over academics, but a lot of people do push, things like tutoring and after school clubs over, you know, being able to talk about how you feel as opposed to grades and GPA.
Got you. And what resources and support systems exist in your school that you're aware of? You heard the previous segment, the board members and the superintendent definitely, they have a plan. They are implementing different strategies. Are you seeing that on the ground? Are you having access to these support systems, your friends, peers? What are you seeing?
We do have a school psychologist. We also have a school nurse, who is also someone that students confide in, and different teachers as well who are very easy to talk to. And also the principal, she's very easy to talk to. She really prioritizes students' mental health. I mean, even she'll text me out of the blue sometimes, checking up on me, which is not something that I can say, most principals do.
Great, thank you. Is there anything else you want to say about this mental health crisis that we are facing, particularly among young people, or what you would like to see more of happen?
I think it's great that the district is trying to create and implement these resources, but also work on making it explicitly known to students that it's available. But I do recognize that it is up to the students to seek out the help.
Okay, thank you, Halea. So stay put. We may come back to you with another question, but now we want to shift to Allison. So Allison James Bryson is a parent of a Newark Public School student. She's also a social worker by profession. Allison, welcome this evening. How are you doing?
Thank you, Dr. Leah Owens. I'm doing well, and thank you for having me tonight.
Absolutely. Please, if you can, share with us what the experience has been for yourself, your family, and particularly as it pertains to the district during COVID when it comes to mental health.
I would first like to say that I was reading a survey, and I actually fall under 3 of those categories when it comes to mental health. Anxiety, grief, and trauma is what I was dealing with. My family was dealing with during this crisis, this crisis. My sister was contracted COVID in March. She was in a coma for 5 months on a ventilator. She had the flu and double pneumonia. And during the time she was in a coma, my brother was rushed to the hospital in April. He actually passed away from COVID. My daughter, who is my adopted daughter, that was her biological father that passed away. So I lost a brother, and my daughter lost a father. And my sister that was in the coma actually raised my adopted daughter. So she was my daughter's psychological mother from age 4 to 10 years old. So can you imagine what my daughter was going through? She lost someone that she saw as a care provider, and she lost her biological father. So a lot was going on in our household. But the main thing that my concern was taking care of my daughter. I was putting my mental health to the side to make sure my daughter was getting the proper care that she can, because she was still in school. So every morning we wake up, I would call it a wellness meeting. My daughter, my husband, and I, we would get together in the living room, and I would just ask everyone, how are you feeling today? Because that means a lot to children, to your family, and let them know, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, and I'm pretty much the head of the household, although the man is the head of the household. But women, we take control when there's a crisis in the house. We want to make sure our family is taken care of. So my daughter, she got up every day, logged on to Zoom, and she did work from 8 a.m. in the morning, probably to 8 o'clock at night. I would have to beg her to get away from schoolwork because that was her way of dealing with what she was going through. She actually excelled well, and she became valedictorian of a class of 2021 last year. So it was really surprising to us that she even did this while losing her father and knowing what her aunt / mom was going through. But this year, last year in December, she contracted COVID from school. And I can tell you that broke her down. She came home. I wasn't home when she came home. And we weren't notified that someone caught COVID in her class. Another individual in her classroom told her Monday when she got to school that someone in the classroom tested positive for COVID. So when my husband picked her up from school, he took her to get tested, and she tested positive. That was the first time I ever in my life saw my daughter that scared because of what she experienced with her father. And my sister, she knew the potential what COVID can do to a person. She's thinking, am I going to die? Am I going to go and, be on the ventilator? Am I going to be in a coma? And then to have your child have these thoughts in her head and then be isolated from the 2 individuals in the household that protects her was just traumatizing at itself. So when it was time to go back to school, she wasn't really ready to go back to school, because she didn't want to catch COVID anymore. But I wanted to, like you said, I'm a social worker, but I didn't want to treat my daughter as if she was one of my clients. So I reached out and we got her help. So she's seeing a therapist that she meets with every week that she talks to. So, but all parents don't have that ability or the resources to do that. It's because of my profession. I knew the steps that I had to take with my daughter to make sure that she would be all right. And knowing that she's in therapy I'm in therapy. I feel like we are moving in the right steps, but we're doing this on our own. But there are so many parents who don't have the resources and the ability or the finances to even have therapy because it's always a co-payment you have to pay. Your insurance pays this much, but families are living paycheck to paycheck. They can't pay $75 for a therapist for an hour every week. That's taking away food from the family. So there is, I applaud the Newark Public School Board. They're doing the best they can with what they can, but there is a need for more professionals inside of the school being active throughout the day that our children and family and parents can reach out to when there's a crisis. And we're in the middle of a crisis. We don't know when when the pandemic is going to end. So there has to be programs to have for our children, a 24-hour hotline or something that give to the parents, like you can call this number at any time, seek help if you need someone to talk to. So I'm just saying to, if any parents are listening, there is help out there. I believe Adorian put resources in the chat, and I know you all you're going to share them on your Facebook page, and that's amazing. And I just hope that parents take advantage of the resources that are provided to them, because we're not just thinking about the parents, we have to think about our children too. Because if the parents are not getting any help, the children are struggling too. The parents have to be mentally stable to raise a family. And if your child is dealing with mental health, parent is dealing with mental health, where does that leave the family? Where are we going?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, I feel every time I had a follow-up question in my mind, you were already addressing it in your next comment. So really appreciate you being so thorough in your response.
Thank
And
you.
I think you brought up absolutely a great point about just having access, right? It's a very important point. And I think that's why, again, to the results of our survey, folks clearly don't know how to access the resources that are existing. And if they could through the school system, right, that's a touch point for families, right? Not just children, but families. So thank you, Allison, for sharing.
Can I
Certainly we send our condolences to you and your family. I'm sure you're still dealing with the grief. So thank you for being here and sharing. It's definitely going to have an impact on other people.
Thank you so much.
So I want to shift to Sharon Redding. So Sharon Redding is a former retired preschool teacher, also a grandparent, active in her grandchildren's lives. So she has also been on the front lines in both of those respects. Good evening, Sharon. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Nice to meet you, Dr. Owens.
Nice to meet you as well. So please, the floor is yours. Can you tell us a little bit about what you have been experiencing as it pertains to mental health, either personally or what you've seen your grandchildren or other children that you are in contact with?
Well, the pandemic has really brought a lot of mental health issues to a lot of children because I was a preschool teacher for over 25 years. So, I know how social and emotional, beginnings for children is so important. And with me having my two of my grandchildren here during the height of the pandemic because their parents are essential workers, it was kind of rough for me, and also with me being a grandparent, not able to see my other grandchildren or my other children, just the isolation, trying to stay safe with me being a senior and stuff, before the vaccinations. And just noticing with my granddaughter, she really went through a lot during this pandemic and stuff because her mother had caught COVID twice. And she was here with me, and she could only see her mother on the weekends, after before she had caught COVID the first time. And it took a real psychological effect on her because we all know my granddaughter is 8. When they're children and stuff, mommy and daddy, that's their world. They need to, be in touch with them, see them, if they speak to them, every day and stuff. Even, when they're down at my house to stay in the weekend, it's always, you still in touch, but just not seeing your parents for that long of a time. And, just remember my granddaughter just crying to me, I want my mommy, and me trying to explain to her that, but the pandemic and she's trying to keep you safe and stuff. And then have my daughter call me at night crying, wanting to see her baby. And it really took a psychological effect on me because I found myself just really feeling really depressed, really down and hopeless, and just, seeing kids outside sometime and the little ones, because I was a 3-year-old preschool teacher, and, just imagining how could they go to school and it's all about them being entwined with their friends and touching each other and touching the teacher and, and just the problem of that, something they really need to have in their lives and stuff. And then with my 11-year-old being on the Zoom, it just like, no matter how much, I tried to make him comfortable and stuff, it just seemed like it just took away from his attention span and stuff, that he didn't have that teacher constantly being there talking with them, that been in person, because the teacher was constantly yelling at another child that wasn't on camera, falling asleep, having other kids come in, parents arguing, and, it's hard on the parents too, because if you have more than one child, you go into more than one school, you trying to get everybody together, then you have the domestic violence and all the food insecurities and all this stuff is just adding on. And these babies are going through these changes and stuff, and we as adults are going through it, and they're feeling the same thing. And just lucky with me that I've had counseling, so I knew when I felt that depression coming on, that I really needed the help. And I knew organizations from the advocacy work that I do in my neighborhood that are places out here that I could go to and feel comfortable with. And it's also a thing of feeling comfortable with talking about what you're feeling and what's going on with you. Because a lot of times you don't feel comfortable just talking to anybody and stuff, but it's agencies and community-based groups out here that make you feel like that make you feel that, comfortable enough to talk. And it helped me to kind of ease some of the anxiety and stuff that my granddaughter and my daughter and my other family members were going through, just by me talking and just getting ideas and stuff, and just trying to promote them to try to, talk to someone.
Absolutely. And thank you just for continuing to highlight the resources that do exist. And so I just want to take a moment to encourage the Facebook audience, if you know of community-based services that can help families, help young people, help adults, please feel free to drop those in the chat, tag folks, bring them in, because another thing that I'm hearing as kind of a theme around all the comments is that this is not just an educational issue, right? I know we're the Alliance for Newark Public Schools, but this is a social issue. This is a cultural issue. Yes, absolutely. And we have some mental health resources that we are sharing on the screen, but it's beyond educational, right? It's not just about what's happening in the schools, but what's actually happening in our communities and our homes as well. All of these issues are intertwined. So Ms. Rennie, is there anything in particular that you can highlight that you recall that the school was able to provide to assist with your grandchildren or even your adult children? Or if you didn't necessarily see anything, what would you have liked to have seen?
Well, my granddaughter, since the new school year moved in, she's moved to a different district. And the two different things I see from where she's at now and when she was here in Newark is that they offer them a whole lot more support, a lot of support for the child, and a whole lot of more support for the parent, to where my daughter is in like a parents group now, and they talk about different things dealing with COVID. And to me, that was really beneficial to her, that the parents getting together and everything. And it's just really like getting the resources that you already know, like me, just putting them out there. I talk to different people and everything. And it's just mainly recognizing what the problem is, because this has been going on. The pandemic, like everybody said, just really brought it to light. And it's just that now a lot of the children just seem hopeless. And I have friends that work in Newark Public Schools, and sometimes they seem hopeless of some of the things that's going on. And it seems like sometimes it's just a big a cow peg that's going to blow up, and it's just going to be the children that's the ones going to suffer, you know. And like Ms. Frison just said, you know, we have to support each other, and we have to make sure we support our staff too, the teachers and everything. Like I said, me being an educator, I understand, you know, and a lot of parents I talked to said that they heard, oh, the parents will see how it is now. And, you know, for me, this, you know, for some people to say that, you know, it wasn't fair and everything, because a lot of parents go through a lot of different things and stuff. And sometimes, you know, the kids going to school, that's their outlet to eat, to be involved with other people and stuff, and to see that love sometimes, you know. So I just really feel for a lot of the children out there. And me as a community member and as a grandparent, as a parent, I'm gonna always do what I can and just support everyone I can. It's just me talking to them and giving them a number to go to, tell them to go on the website, and just to, you know, push whatever I can. But we really just need more support for the families out here that really need that mental health support and stuff. Not always going to somewhere where they, you know, that's a hospital or this building, or you go into the school, but somewhere in the community where they know that they can feel safe and everything, and that they can get the help that they need.
Thank you. Again, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. And we really appreciate it. And you definitely sound like a connector, right? So you know some of the sources that are out there, and you look to connect people to them. So thank you for that work. And on that point about the educators, I'd like to shift to Yvette Jordan, who's a history teacher in the district. Good evening, Mrs. Jordan. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you.
Great, great. So same question I'll pose to you as I pose to the other panelists for this segment. What would you like to share about your experiences concerning mental health during COVID? Again, whether they're personal to you as an individual, your family, or particularly, we definitely want to hear what's going on in the schools.
Well, I think the takeaways from everybody who's spoken, especially in this segment, is really, really glaring. And what Halia started off saying was really impactful. And then when we heard from the caregivers, a parent and a grandparent, you can see that their lives have really taken a toll in the pandemic. But we also have to remember, and unfortunately, we don't think as much about the people who are in the schools, and that is the teachers and the staff and the faculty and the administrators and the custodians and the food service workers, everybody who touches the children. And this is what really concerns me. So I can easily say, okay, my students are weighted down, and they are. And I see this every day when they come in and they're abrasive, and they usually aren't, or their head is down, or maybe I haven't seen them in about a week or so, and I'm wondering why I haven't seen them, because no one informed the faculty that the student has COVID. And we have been around this student, and several of my colleagues have really, well, they're upset about this, obviously, but some of them have contracted COVID and weren't informed of the students who we share having this. So I understand HIPAA, but I also understand that if you're around somebody for a certain amount of time, you should be informed that you are at risk. That aside, the weight of all of this is displayed by our teachers and the administrators also. I had said I wasn't going to say much about administrators. It's just they have a lot on them as well. And as a union rep, you know, I only care about my members, right? But I also have to acknowledge that the administrators are weighted down with this every single day and having to make choices about the security and safety of the people in the building. It's just tough. So for the teachers and the food service workers who really get a bad rap, and the custodians who hear a lot from students, because many times the custodians are seen as invisible, and that's awful for them. However, it's true. So I remember one custodian saying, you know, I hear a lot and students share with me, and nobody realizes how much we take home also. So all of these people, as I said, who touch the children are going through it. We all are going through it. And sometimes you just want to sit there and cry. I mean, as a union rep, I sit with some of my members who may have an issue. They're having a meeting with an administrator about, and you can just see all it is the stress of what has happened and is going on. And when an administrator says, are you stressed? Are you anxious? And they said, yeah, we are. It's bad. It's really, really bad. And
So I do want to get to what the superintendent and board members were speaking to again in terms of the resources. So like asked Halea, being someone in the school day in and day out, you're another person in the school day in, day out. What are you seeing on the ground in terms of the resources that are provided, and not only just for students, but also for, to your point, the adults in the building, the faculty, the staff? What are you seeing it? What's going on?
I'm not seeing it. I'm not. I know my peers are there who are trained for that, and I'm talking about the social workers and the psychologists in the building, and I recognize that. But I'm talking for myself in particular, and for others, we have EAP, but that's an
Can you say what that is?
Employee assistance programs. However, we need SEL in the building so we can support each other, because sometimes we need a timeout. So for example, when I'm in my class and a student is acting out and I'm just like, OMG, I can't stay in here right now with this wonderful child, I will stick my head out and see if one of my colleagues is available. Would you step in? I just need 5 minutes. But everybody can't always do that. So we do need, I believe, some type of a program, something where we can unwind, we can breathe, we can just like, and have somebody help and really guide us through that. We don't have that right now. And then for my students, I think Halea was even mentioning that she has certain faculty members or people in the building she can go to who she knows are receptive and warm to her. Everybody's not like that. Let's be real. Everybody is not like that. And some people are like, okay, I got to stay on pace. I've got to finish my lesson and I got to get there by Wednesday and have an assessment. Sometimes I say, I'm not doing that, because we just got to talk about how we feel today, because I can feel it in the room. So all of these things I'm saying to say that I feel in particular that it's okay for my colleagues, and I don't know how the superintendent feels about this. I may be putting myself out there, but I feel at times we just need that break to say, we can take half an hour, 15 minutes a day, a week to breathe. And that's not happening on a regular basis. I know I'm going on and on. I could go on, but I'll wait.
But no, we appreciate that. I mean, I think that speaks to the idea that, this is a moment, pretty much like any time could be a moment, but in particular, this is a moment that we really could use to reimagine what education looks like in this district. And we could think about some of the strategies like Wellness Wednesdays that seem to have an impact on students, a positive impact on students, and again, staff and faculty, to be able to have a break, to be able, to your point, say, just have a conversation about what's going on, to catch up, if they weren't there virtually one day, now here's a day that I can just have a one-to-one conversation with my teacher during office hours. So, I mean, I think it is an opportunity to rethink the way that we deliver education, because we are now looking to center the social, emotional, and mental well-being of everyone who's a part of the system. So again, I want to thank everyone. We come to the end of the time for this segment. Again, thank you, Allison, Sharon, Halea, Yvette. Again, all of what you have shared is certainly having an impact on someone. They learned something tonight. They appreciate you sharing your story, and maybe they have more confidence in sharing their own and seeking help. So thank you again. We are going to segue into the next segment with a video, but I invite these panelists to step down from the panel and join the Facebook audience. And again, thank you and good evening to the panelists. So I think we're gonna cue up the video and then move to the next segment.
A lot of kids who see me see the life that an artist lives and the touring that we do and the music that we make, and see this career that we have is super fun, and there's no way you could be sad or mad or depressed about anything. But, you know, I deal with the same issues as well. Taking care of yourself and making sure you don't always feel alone is kind of the most important part. What you really need is a friend. Kind of just recharges your soul in a way. Anytime my friends kind of beat around the bush about stuff, I like to call them out on it. If you feel something in your gut, if you feel something's wrong, you should talk to them about that. I know it may seem awkward and difficult to reach out to a friend who's struggling with mental health, but the best thing you can do is be a friend. Start the conversation and learn more at seizetheawkward.org.
Thank you, Dr. Owens and the former panelists for, wow, we really do have a lot to talk about. And so I have for those of you who may not have heard me in my first introduction, my name is Deborah Smith Gregory, and I actually have the pleasure of introducing two professionals, because we can talk about the problems and explore them, but we get to come together with solutions, with ways that we can help one another. And so I would like to introduce our two panelists for this last segment. Dr. Monique Swift is proprietor of Swift Solutions Consultant Services. She is a New Jersey licensed professional counselor, as well as a New York licensed mental health counselor with over 20 years of clinical experience in the field of mental health. She operates a private practice where she specializes in couples therapy and trauma. She is actively involved in racial and social justice efforts and initiatives, and her volunteer efforts benefit the Black community. Dr. Sinclair Davis is a son of Newark, a graduate of our county vocational school, the one that was located on North 13th Street. He graduated from Fairleigh Dickinson University, and he is the head of counseling for St. Benedict's Prep. And so I wanted to start this off. I'm still kind of processing, what I've heard, but can you, as the experts, I would ask that you respond to what you heard, putting on your professional's hat, and what tools that you can share to support our community. I'll start with you, Dr. Swift.
Yes, okay, thank you, Deborah. And thank you for hosting this forum and bringing some of these issues to light, creating the conversation. But, you know, having that segment that we just experienced with those who are speaking from a personal perspective on how they have been, you know, managing through the pandemic and how the interfacing with school and what the schools are offering or not offering impacted their well-being. I was taken by a number of things that were said. There were a few points, and Yvette Jordan, who spoke last, emphasized something that I often emphasize as well. When we talk about school and we're talking about the needs for school, we often focus on the students. We often, and we should, right? The students are important, but the piece that we tend to overlook is the faculty, the staff, the support staff, the security guard. She spoke about the custodian, right? The person who works in the lunchroom. All of these people who touch the lives of the young people, it's important for us to kind of put them in the equation of trying to figure out how to do this thing better. And often we forget that. So that was a point that really was elevated for me because it syncs with my soapbox. There were quite a number of points, but for the sake of time, I just want to also lift the comments from Halia, the high school student who spoke, and she said something that was very profound and also in sync with how I view the needs or our reaction to the needs. And that is that she talked about mental health taking priority over her goals. And I can't underscore that enough. We've got to get a point, and board member Adorian also emphasized this, to really kind of put some of those, you know, needing to achieve the benchmarks and the grades and all the academic, scheduling, all of that. We have to kind of deprioritize some of that now, particularly in the wake of us trying to, we're not in the wake of the pandemic, but trying to kind of heal from the impact and damage of the pandemic. We've really got to kind of press the pause button and collect ourselves. And it feels like, and I haven't been in the schools myself personally, but I'm talking to a lot of people who have, and it feels like when we went back into in-person, it was just like business as usual, let's go forward. But nobody, there wasn't space and time given for people to collect themselves. And so you asked about tools as well. And in terms of tools, I am a huge proponent of mindfulness tools that are really critical in the space of what we're dealing with right now. Mindfulness, grounding, meditation, those tools are critical. Also, just getting out into nature, right? There are tons of studies that show that this is beneficial, that people who go out into nature, into green spaces, these people are faring better. They report less anxiety and depression, less stress, and also report higher degrees of satisfaction. And so that's a key piece. Even people who are not out in green spaces, but perhaps they sit at a desk where they can see nature, right? That even makes an impact as well. And so that's something that we need to introduce. Perhaps maybe when, you know, weather breaks and things are a bit warm, that school goes out, not into the concrete schoolyard, right? But into a green space. That's an important piece also. In terms of coping, religious activity and connection also has shown, I've read a number of reports that have been looking at the pandemic and how people have coped. And that, particularly for Black and Brown people and Native people, has been a key coping mechanism. Their activity and connection with religious principles, rituals, and other people as well. And so, you know, not for nothing, I think the society that we live in we kind of run counter to what works well for our mental health. We emphasize and function in a very individualistic way, and specifically Black and Brown people work best in a village, in a community, in concert with one another. And so that's some of the elements too, also of how we can create a space to be better. So I don't want to go on and on. I want to defer also to my colleague, Dr. Davis.
Dr. Davis, you want to weigh in on responding to what you've heard and sharing some tools that we can share with our community?
Of course, of course. Thank you very much. Dr. Swift spoke about some of the things that we need to do as far as helping the adults, and I think that's very key, and that's something that we're working on in our school as well, is setting up some workshops to service our adult population. Last semester, we actually had the Mental Health Association come into the school and provide a workshop. It was 1 week after school. You know, they came and provided different coping mechanisms and strategies that they can use throughout the year. But upcoming, we want to do something a little more personal, so we can probably hold something once a month, bi-weekly, with the staff, because they're going through it just like the students are going through it. And regarding the students at St. Benedict's, we've always taken mental health as, is always looked at as a supreme priority. You know, it's the athletics of the school, you know, the education is great, but the counseling services are what keeps some kids in the school, you know. So when students initially enroll at St. Benedict's Prep, there's a screener that they complete. Nothing super personal, but it talks about their feelings about their emotions, how they feel about parents, school, the community. And from that checklist, and I'm mentioning this because I heard the superintendent and his staff speak about what they're planning to do. And you guys did a great job with getting a survey out to see where everyone stands. What would be really good is if we knew how they felt before the pandemic. I mean, there's nothing we can do about that, but to compare that stuff is amazing. But you have what you have, and you can, you know, use it going forward. But what we do is, once we get the screener out to the freshmen, seventh graders, transfers, whomever, we all, everyone in our office, in our counseling department, we all review the checklist, and from the checklist, you know, put them into different piles to see who may need a group, who probably can do individual, some kids who maybe just fine, some students who we need to speak to yesterday based off what they checked off. And from there, we do interviews with those students to see if there's anything further, you know, because they can check off something that doesn't mean what you think it means, you know, or it means a lot more than what they led on to believe. And from there, if individual counseling is something that we feel they need, you know, a consent form is sent home, have a conversation with the parents, inform them of what confidentiality looks like, let them know we can discuss how we can help them out. And from there, in most cases, the parents sign it, because a lot of parents, they want them to talk to somebody, especially the adolescents. They get to that point where, you know, mommy and daddy aren't Superman anymore, they're regular people. So, you know, the relationship may not be the same, and they may not be speaking to them. They, you know, in that time, their friends are the main, you know, feature of their life. But if there's someone else that they can talk to, the parents are just happy that they're not holding those issues in. And from then, we work with the students. There's some kids I've seen for, you know, as little as 3 or 4 sessions, and some kids I've seen from 7th graders until they graduated high school. And I granted, towards the end, it may not have been as intense. It may be something as little as a check-in, you know, once a week, just to let them know that they do have someone that they can lean on. And we've seen top athletes in the school, student leaders, kids who get great grades, kids who don't get the best grades, all come through our office. So that stigma of, well, I can't speak to that person, like who, but you do know this person, that person, this person, they all go through. And it's not a matter of no confidentiality. The kids are willing to tell each other who goes to counseling. And that's a benefit that we have. And this was initiated by Dr. Ivan Lamort and Dr. Gerard Figarelli many years ago. And I'm fortunate to be able to step into this space and continue what's been going on. And one more thing I like to add is, you know, we've seen the kids come back into the school, and some of them may not be behaving how they used to be, or their performance isn't what it was. We have to consider some of these kids, they come to school to get rid of what some of the problems may have been, whether it be a dysfunctional home or, you know, certain living conditions that they're not too proud of. And they had to stay in those living conditions for a pretty long time, you know, so whatever issue they may have had with a caregiver, it turned up exponentially, you know, so whatever habits they may have had that weren't the best, they've been ingrained a little bit more. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And it's not going to be, you know, okay, the masks are off now, everybody is good in the next year or so. Though this is something that needs to continue. And we've seen it affect, my apologies for running on and on, I'm just on one now, but we've seen it affect the bigger kids, you know, in that St. Benedict's now we have kindergartners as well. And some of the kindergartners consider they're 5 years old. When this stuff started, they were 3 years old. So they didn't have that preschool, that formal, okay, stand in line, okay, fold your hands. They didn't have that. So they're coming in operating developmentally like a 3-year-old, and they're 5 years old, you know, and we all understand it, but it's been a challenge nonetheless.
So to your point, you said that historically the schools have been the anchor in a lot of our communities. And we're now looking 2 years down the road from COVID. And as we approach these 2 years, and we know we can't go back, what do you see that needs to be a long-range plan to get the school community on the right track to provide mental, social, and emotional, as well as the academic needs of children?
And it's for me or Dr. Swift? I want to play my position adequately.
Well, I would like to start with you and follow up with Dr. Swift.
Yes, so some of the things that I just mentioned and went on about. So we have groups every morning. On Mondays, we have a group for students who have a loved one at home who may be suffering from some form of substance abuse. On Tuesdays, we have a group for students who have experienced or may be experiencing depressive and anxiety symptomology. On Wednesdays, we have a group for students who may have been experienced father absence. Thursdays, for the girls, you know, once again, so Benedict has changed a whole lot from what people may have known. Now we have K through 12 boys and girls, but in the 9 through 12, there's separate divisions. So the girls have groups as well for depression, anxiety, anger management. On Fridays, the boys have anger management. For the middle school students, they have a life skills group for the girls and an anger management group as well. So we want to keep that in rotation going consistently, because in that group, what happens is, let's say I'm in the group and I have a friend, but they don't go to the group, but they'll ask, hey, so what's going on? I've been going through X, Y, and Z. They'll bring them in. So the referrals that come from the students are gold, because you've already built rapport. So they feel comfortable with you. And if their friend is willing, more than likely they'll join in. So we've had very good fortune in that regard, but to have the groups going in conjunction with the individual, the issues that the students are going through is not a Band-Aid to throw over it, because that's just not how it works. You know, I always tell students when they come in, you know, whether they've heard good things or bad things, I say, okay, so start writing with your left hand if you're right-handed, or if you're left-handed, start writing with your right hand. It's going to be ugly initially, it's going to be frustrating, you're going to want to quit. But after a while, if you keep working at it, it'll be pretty good. And granted, it may not be the best parallel, but I want them to understand this is work. It's not going to always be that we're smiling and having a good time. And if we're doing that, I'm not doing my job good enough. You know, so long range, you want to implement the services that the superintendent and the staff were talking about, but it has to continue. Just like many years ago, there was an initiative about healthy eating and things of that nature. And I would assume that that's still continuing on in the Newark Public Schools. And right now, and this is great. It's not great that it happened, but because of the pandemic, you know, everybody who was in the closet about wanting to participate in services, it became okay to do it now. Before, in some spaces, it wasn't, you know, accepted, but now it's like, okay, well, if everybody's saying it's okay, I like to try it out. And now that we're going to do it, let's keep it going. And resources, I'm sure it's going to cost time and money, and that's great. But if students are eating up in here really bad, it's going to be hard to produce academically. I've heard students tell me all the time, and I've seen students improve over the same time. But I mean, cut it short. My apologies. I get excited sometimes, like we get into this.
So Dr. Swift, I'd like to ask you another question because I see that our time is at hand and there is just so much to cover. But what I would ask you, well, for the audience may not be aware that you are associated with the Association of Black Psychologists. But what I would like to ask you, if you were advising the superintendent and the board members who were on earlier, what are 3 things that you would tell them that needs to happen now to address our crisis in our community?
Yeah, so yes, I am affiliated. I'm actually currently sitting as president of the New Jersey chapter of the Association of Black Psychologists. And so please add that to the list of resources that have been going and circulating here. But in regard to, making recommendations, it has been said a couple of times here, and I said it earlier, that we have to kind of take that pause, that we have to take a moment to ask children and teachers, faculty, staff, admin, people, all of the above, how are we doing today, right? In the more immediacy, we have to take that moment and create space, not just to ask the question, but also for there to be a response to the question, a genuine, sincere response. We have to institute, I guess, the humanity back into, a lot of these things that I'm hearing are really good on paper, but don't really translate in the everyday practical interactions that we are having in a school building. And we heard that earlier. One of the panelists said, well, yeah, all these programs are going on, all these resources are circulating, but I'm not really seeing it on the ground. We have to see, and we see it on the ground when we feel it from each other, when we enact it. The thing is that wellness, we kind of look at mental health and wellness as an intervention, but it's not an intervention. It is a way of being. And we're behind the 8 ball because we haven't been being in a way that will create wellness. And so we have to take that in consideration. And then one last piece, that in the long term, we have to also account for the fact that schools are truly a linchpin in the perpetuation of social inequalities. Schools are a linchpin in the perpetuation of generational poverty, right? And so how is this? Why is this? Schools, we have to, so I'm talking more from a systemic level now, because we can't just focus in on, the individual and the services. We have to now also look at the systemic, broader issues that are standing before us that have created more impact in COVID as well. Like COVID, in many ways, it removed the veil on so many disparities, right? But one of them is that our school system is not working effectively, most particularly for Black and Brown students. And so that's something that also needs to be looked at. We're sit here still that, one of the things that create this disparity is that our schools are funded by taxes. And we know the all the dots that connect to that, and that the outcome of that is that our schools are under-resourced, our schools are underfunded, our teachers are not paid well, right? And so what is the impact? The ultimate impact is that no matter sometimes how intelligent or gifted or motivated a student is, when they're given a suboptimal environment that cultivates them, it really it precludes their ability to fully determine who they are and can be. And so that, I would say, needs to be emphasized as a long-reaching issue that has to be looked at today.
Thank you so much, both of you, Dr. Swift and Dr. Davis. We kind of got a late start, so our back end is being truncated somewhat. But what I would say to our audience is that if you visit the Alliance Facebook page, we will have information, resources for you to use, to share with one another. This conversation is not a one-time conversation. As a matter of fact, the NAACP Newark chapter will be having a part 2 to this conversation, but about the community as a whole, not necessarily pushing or focusing on the children, but the community as a whole, on Thursday, February 10th, at 6:30 p.m. Again, we are utilizing Facebook Live as much as we can until we can gather, because that is a big part of it too. We need to gather one to another, and because we can't, we're just making the best of a situation. So that's this coming Thursday at 6:30 on the NAACP page. And we just want to thank you so much for sharing your professionalism with us. It's more than it is. What someone say, something about like $75 an hour. Okay, so we've just taken quite a leap with you, but we thank you so much for your advocacy for the mental wellness of our community. And what we would like to do is to end with another video about the importance of talking to one another. This is what this is about. We have to talk to one another. And someone said, it's okay now for us to do so. So we just want to continue to encourage you to talk to someone.
Worried your friend's struggling but don't know how to reach out?
You could say, how are you, or get a fake tattoo. You could ask with an app if it works for you. You could write them a text or knit them a sweater. If you can't be together, you could write them a letter. Whatever gets you talking. Whatever gets you talking. You could chat on the game, kick off your flip-flops. You could ask on your couch while you binge watch. However you do it, you gotta ask a friend. And if they don't share, you can ask again. Whatever gets you talking. Whatever gets you talking.
There are a lot of ways to reach out to a friend about their mental health. Learn how you can help at seizetheawkward.org.
So with that final video, we want to say to our audience, thank you for tuning in. Please share, please talk to one another. We will be sure to put up all the resources so that you can have tools to use. We are in this together, and we get to come together repeatedly because our humanity is greater and we're stronger with one another. So again, on behalf of the Alliance for Newark Public Schools, I would like to thank all of our panelists, from the superintendent, the board members, the community, and certainly our professionals. We thank you, and we would ask you to come back again and to have a follow-up conversation at another time. We have been given these town halls. We understand the importance of having these conversations. So thank you again, and good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.